क्या बाइबल डेटिंग अलाउ करता है?
Bible doesn't have anything about dating. As far as I know, nothing that the Bible says about dating either way. The purpose of dating is for marriage. That is what I would be very clear about.
Like what are we meant to do in dating? करे क्या?
Don't date just for fun. Do be receptive to feedback. Do seek advice. Do get again, don't keep it secret. On the other hand, have mentors, have pastors, have wise people in your life who you can ask, who you can talk to.
One key mantra है ना, to maintain good relationship.
Humility. Big conflict areas of marriage are money, kids, and in-laws.
The key idea essence is oneness, ekta, and different accounts, but one budget, one heart, one view of how you want to save, how you want to spend. Thank you, Pastor Arvind, for being here. And we are really looking forward to understanding. And maybe this will help us कि हम अपना पहला सवाल के बारे में सोचें. We know कि Bollywood or Hollywood talks a lot about dating. Young people, young working people think about a lot about dating. And nowadays, because Gurgaon is a city of apps, there are a lot of apps for dating. I don't know, but I'm sure you all know those apps. So the first question is, क्या Bible dating allow करता है? As followers of Christ, क्या Bible हमें allow करता है कि date करना चाहिए, नहीं करना चाहिए?
Right. Okay, yeah, that's a good question. The Bible doesn't have anything about dating. As far as I know, nothing that the Bible says about dating either way. So this was written, many years ago. Dating is actually relatively new as a concept in the culture, in the world. So yeah, I think what I would say is, so in that sense, dating is allowed. There is some freedom in that as. Yeah, I think the main thing is, what is the purpose of dating? Why are we dating? Is dating just for fun? Is it to have some physical intimacy, or is it to show off maybe? Or what are we doing when we're dating? And I would say the purpose of dating is for marriage. That is what I would be very clear about. It's not just for fun. It's not just for, just fill some emotional void or something like that. There's lots of other things that we can do for those things, as friendship and so on. But dating is specifically, as we're moving towards marriage and considering somebody for marriage, dating is one way. It's not the only way also, but it's one way in this modern world that we can think about who would be an appropriate person to get married to. So the Bible has lots to say about marriage. And God created marriage, and I think we'll talk about marriage. So marriage is a wonderful thing. Dating is one way to get to marriage, and I think it's also important to understand what is marriage according to the Bible. And God created marriage. He knows how marriage works and what makes marriage work. And so the more that we understand about marriage, the more that we can actually date well if we are going to date. And I think we'll get more into that.
So the idea है कि the purpose of dating is marriage. अगर शादी करनी नहीं, तो dating करनी नहीं. Maybe this brings us to the next question, the do's and don'ts of dating. So let's say the Bible gives us the freedom, and अगर हमारा desire है to marry this person, then dating may be a good start and an option. So what are the do's and don'ts? क्या कर सकते हैं, क्या नहीं कर सकते हैं? Is there an age? Means can we start dating when you're a teenager, maybe college में, or should we wait for working? How long should we date? कोई timeline है 7 साल, 15 साल, बस dating ही चल रहा है. And so if the purpose is marriage, like what are we meant to do in dating? करे क्या? If that is the purpose, right? What are some big no's कि ये सब नहीं करना चाहिए, or what are some big yes?
Yeah. So, Pastor Gladwin gave me some of these questions beforehand. So I made a list of do's and don'ts in terms of dating. So let me just share some of these. First of all, I've already said this, don't date just for fun. I think dating again has to be for a purpose. I think if we get into dating just for fun or just for companionship or uh, intimacy before marriage, it's going to be a mess. So I think it's got that clear purpose. I would say generally, don't keep it a secret. Yeah, my first dating relationship I kept secret from everybody, or I tried. I thought it was. Turned out that it wasn't, and that's usually the case. That, by the way, I was like 20 years old, so that was like, I won't tell you how old I am, but like 25 years ago. Anyways, uh, yeah, I think the more that we keep things secret, I know life is complicated and there may be various factors, but we need somebody to know, some accountability and all those kinds of things. Secret is usually going to end up in a mess. I would say don't date non-believers, and probably we'll get into that more, so I won't get into that right now. Don't get physically intimate. Don't get physically intimate. So why date? Well, I think we're moving towards marriage, but physical intimacy is something, and I think again we'll talk about this, but is something that should be reserved for marriage. And I heard someone say that the Bible, if we're talking about the Bible, and that's really our guidebook for all these topics and every topic, the Bible talks about a marriage relationship, and then it talks about a brother-sister relationship. There's really, it doesn't talk about girlfriend, boyfriend. These are foreign topics. So that person that you're dating, even if you're dating someone, you're getting close, to being very serious and getting married and stuff like that. But that person is still your sister. That person is still your brother. And yeah, I'm more and more convinced. In fact, that's how, by the time I was, you could say, dating my wife, this is basically the perspective that we had, that this is my sister, this is my brother. Until we get married, we're actually just brother and sister. And what is appropriate between brother and sister is appropriate between even a dating couple. So that might be a little bit of a radical thing in today's world, but I believe that. And I think that is very, very helpful. It saves us from a lot of heartache. Yeah, just a few other ones really quickly. Don't dishonor your family or church. I think that's just common sense, common wisdom. Um, yeah, don't date for years. I would suggest, like you were mentioning, 7 years, 15 years. I've had people, and sometimes, there might be circumstances that don't allow you to get married, but you want to marry this person, but for whatever reason you can't, and so it kind of gets extended. But don't go into it. I would say keep it short, as short as possible. Again, it's very purpose driven, in my opinion. So this is basic, and you really don't need much time to figure out if this person is somebody who I should marry or not marry. And I think as much time as you need for that is about how much time you should date for. I would say move on, get engaged, and even engagement, I would say do it as quickly as possible and get married. Some positive sides, so those are some don'ts. Positive side, do be receptive to feedback, do seek advice. Again, don't keep it secret. On the other hand, have mentors, have pastors, have wise people in your life who you can ask, who you can talk to. Most of these issues are very complicated, messy sometimes, and there's lots of factors that maybe as a young person you may not think about. Somebody who has been married or whatever has experience in this can give a lot of insight and important advice, counsel. Pursue marriage, do pursue God together. It's not like God is on one side and then dating is on the other side, and that's when I kind of have fun. Don't do that. We're pursuing God together. Keep God right from the beginning as the center of even your dating relationship. Do stay pure. Do set boundaries, physically and maybe even otherwise, just wise boundaries. Maybe don't be alone in a house at night when nobody else is there. That's just going to result in some kind of mess. So it's just wise kind of boundaries like that. Do talk a lot. Communication, I think, is a very important thing. Probably less physical kind of intimacy, more communication. We really want to talk and talk and talk and really find out as much as we can about this person. And I think that's what dating is for. Do see if you're really friends, and if you can be friends. I think marriage is in many ways is built on the on a foundation of course, of commitment before God and so on, but also on a foundation of friendship. And friendship is, you want to be married to a friend. And I think a dating kind of period is a good time to figure out, are we actually friends? And do we have those things in common? Couple other things. Do see if you're moving in the same direction. You know, yeah. Does this person share the same big values? Maybe in small things we might be a little different and so on, or very different. But in the big things, you know, what I want to do in life, what is my purpose? Why am I here? What am I going after? What do I want to do? Where do I want to live? And you know, how many kids do I want to have? Maybe even, you know, those kinds of conversations at some point will be helpful in figuring out if this person is right for you in terms of marriage. And last one, do keep a long-term perspective. I think, you know, when you get into dating, close friendship, somebody of the opposite sex, you know, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of hormones, there's a lot of, you know, lots of things that are kind of flowing inside of you, and you just want to, you know, it's like your brain shuts off and you just kind of are into it. And yeah, as much as you can, keep a long-term perspective. And I think other people and their counsel can really help with that. So just a few ideas. That was a lot, I know.
No, it's helpful. So I think before हम सोचे कि we should date, सब date कर रहे हैं, हम भी date करें. Maybe first question, as I understand, is to ask ourselves, क्या हम शादी के लिए तैयार हैं? Right? If you're not even ready for marriage, considering dating is not a healthy option.
Yes.
And especially I think it's good है ना, कुछ चीज़ें शादी के लिए reserve करो, right? The physical definitely. But I think even emotionally, how much you share and open, क्योंकि it's a vulnerable relationships, you know, दिल खोल के हम रख देते हैं. But कुछ चीज़ें शादी के लिए रखो, right? If सब कुछ पहले ही शादी का लड्डू पहले ही खा लिया, तो फिर बाद में मीठा नहीं लगता, right? And
yeah, I think on that note, let me just say, I have a daughter who's in 8th class. She's almost 13, and all of her friends are dating. Everybody kind of thing, you know, and so that's like the talk. And it's not just started now, it's been going on for like a couple of years now. And yeah, I keep saying, you know, what is dating for? And you know, what you were mentioning about, you know, what is the right age and things like that. Like you said, I think that if we're not even thinking about marriage, ready for marriage, you know, then yeah, then I think dating, just put it off. It's okay. We can have friends that are all kinds of friends, have a good time and so on, but that kind of, yeah, dating is really moving into some kind of intimacy. And like you said, probably shouldn't move too far into that, but you know, you are getting, and I keep telling my daughter that, you know, you don't want to be this kind of person, which I've seen a lot, and even I've kind of experienced that myself. You know, you give your heart away. Forget about your body. That's, you know, that's another level. But even you give your heart away. You date this person, you date this person, and you get intimate, especially if it's like a longer relationship with each person. Yeah, by the time you get married, you've actually given your heart to so many people. In some ways, it obviously it does affect you, and it kind of detracts from your marriage. So, yeah, be very careful, I would say.
yeah, no, I think, yeah, because you're trusting so many people here, trust A, trust B, trust C. By the time you get married, you have trust issues then. And it's very hard and difficult. A lot of marriage couples that you, I'm sure, counsel, sometimes I counsel, they struggle to trust because their trust has been broken so many times. But the other thing also, I think, communication जो आपने कहा dating में बहुत ज़रूरी है. And I think, and even mentioning hormones, you know, like sometimes we think the strength of our relationship, if you hold hands, you know, again, physical intimacy kitna allowed hai? We can hold hands, side hug, yahan puchi, maybe yahan, you know, and but all that kya karta hai ki relationship ka jo like measurement hai. You know, you might think just because you're holding hands, hormones kick in, you feel this is a strong relationship. But it needs to be based on communication and friendship. Are you willing to even talk, spend time without all those things to understand the strength of the relationship? Basically, it's a time to talk about everything, but within that everything, not everything in regards with marriage, but towards marriage. It is that journey. Yeah. So we did talk about, like, as followers of Christ, Means again, we all know this. Love is pure. God is love. प्यार तो अंधा है. God is love. Love is so pure. इतना शुद्ध और साफ है. Can't we just love anyone? Why bring faith, Bible, Jesus? आत्मिकता अलग है. ये तो दिल का मामला है. What does विश्वास and यीशु मसीह का क्या लेन देन है इससे?
Yeah, that's a big question that a lot of people have. Yeah, I think my view on this is extremely clear. Has nothing to do with intercaste marriage and so on. We are called as followers of Christ. We're called to love everyone. Literally, we are called to love everyone. But marriage, we're not called to marry everyone. Marriage is a lifelong commitment, and it's a very commonsensical thing to me. Our faith is the core of the core of who we are as human beings. That basically should decide everything in your whole life. What am I here for? What is the purpose of my life? What are my values? Where am I going in my life? And if you cannot share that core thing with the most intimate relationship that you'll ever have in life, which is marriage, if you cannot share that thing with your spouse, everything else that you share is all peripheral. It's all secondary. That core thing you want to share, you have to share. You have to be moving in the same direction, otherwise you'll be moving apart. Or you have to, if Jesus is the center of your heart, then Jesus is not the center of your potential spouse's heart, then one of two things will happen. Either, hopefully, that person will have to come to faith, or you will leave the faith. Otherwise, or another option is that you won't really be truly intimate, right? Because that core thing is missing from between you. And so, we've seen over the years so many. I mean, I can just share one lady who was in our church. She was like maybe 65 years old, calling me. This is like, I was probably 30 years old. This lady is like old, she could be my mom, and she's calling me as her former pastor. She's living in Singapore, and she's calling me crying on the phone saying, my husband is a very wonderful person, and he's so good in every way, but we cannot share, we don't have the same faith. He was from a different background, and the thing that I've been growing in my faith for all these years, but he's just not, he's so good, but he doesn't share that, and what am I supposed to say? Just sitting here in Gurgaon, and this lady who could be my mom crying to me, and just keep thinking of that thing when I talk to people. So don't think of that long-term perspective. Right now, everything looks very nice, and this person is a very good person, and just because you marry someone of the same faith doesn't mean it's going to be a perfect marriage. Also, we also realize that, but at least set yourself up in a right way, in a good way, that you share the core thing. Everything else we can probably figure out. But that core thing should be common, and I think that's why a couple of Bible verses here. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14. Do not be yoked with unbelievers. I think that, that's a slightly different context, but I think it fits with this as well in terms of marriage. Also, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 40 says, marry anyone she wishes. He's talking about women here, but he must belong to the Lord. So God is just concerned about us. He wants us to make the right decisions. This is a one-time thing. And make sure that central thing is there. Right? Other things, again, you can probably figure out.
And I think this ties to this question, Sawal. Like one of the trend is that we always want to ask about compatibility. Everyone is like in a relationship, in a marriage, and dating. Are we compatible? And so I think I also strongly believe this. If in most of the areas, if compatibility doesn't work, it's fine. But spiritual compatibility is important. Means if you know us, both our wives are not from this culture, right? And especially me and my wife, we are opposite personalities, opposite taste. She loves rom-com, teeny, romantic flicks. I'm a hardcore South Indian movie action Rajnikant fan, so we don't watch movies together, right? But when we were doing our marriage preparation, counseling, dating, all together, I think in there was a survey, एक survey किया गया, and in that survey, the only strength we both shared was spiritual compatibility. And by God's grace, we're married 7 years. We've got 2 kids. I'm gonna stay there. But yeah, I think it just helps. You know, like I remember one of my mentors saying, शादी करना, निभाना करना आसान है, निभाना मुश्किल है. So जो मदद मिले, whatever factors helps to keep the marriage strong, long lasting, use it. And obviously you have all the other compatibilities, but the spiritual compatibility, your faith is not there, it will just have devastating effects. And that's what Pastor Arvind was also sharing. And just to touch on that, I think especially nowadays, one of the things while dating a lot of people, and there's pressure on even those who are in faith, having sexual compatibility. And so there's a cultural push, ठीक है, सब कुछ सही है. What does the Bible have to say about sex before marriage? Yeah.
Yeah, sex before marriage. So, yeah, maybe we can just step back for a moment and just talk about sexual relationship. What is that for, and what's happening there? The Bible, I think, is very clear that sexual relationship, physical intimacy in marriage is a bond between husband and wife, and it's just one aspect of a full kind of, if you want to put it this way, undressing. A full undressing of yourself before another person. The Bible says that when God first created marriage, he said that, let me just read this, Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, this is why a man leaves his father and mother, is united to his wife, they become one flesh. One flesh. So, that is the kind of relationship that is there between a husband and a wife. And that also kind of implies that this is a full sharing. And there's nothing that I'm holding back from her. There's nothing that she's holding back from me. And it's in that kind of context of financial sharing and emotional sharing, spiritual sharing, and family sharing, children sharing, all those kinds of sharing, that now as one, we also become physically one. We also, you could say, share our bodies with one another. Now, if that happens before marriage, then you're sharing yourself with this person and this person and this person and that person, and that's actually a very sad thing, that you've already shared yourself in the deepest way, you could say, in the most intimate way, with a variety of people, whereas the Bible says you marry one person for life, and you share yourself at that level of intimacy with one person for life. And I think when you do that, then the compatibility. This, I was talking to my wife about this, like this whole sexual compatibility. Like if you've only had sex with one person, you don't know. I mean, are you compatible? Of course you're compatible. You only know one person. And I think the danger comes when you've had multiple partners, and now you're comparing and this and that, and I think you're married to one person, you are sharing life, it's a lifelong commitment with one person. You will figure it out. There will be differences of opinion, different preferences, and this and that, but you'll figure all of those things out. And I think it's very sad, actually, in our day and age, with pornography, with a lot of sexual activity, especially among young people before marriage, that whole mystery of marriage, that beautiful gift, like you talked about, just kind of unwrapping it before your birthday, unwrapping it before Christmas or whatever it is. And, all of that excitement or that beauty, that mystery is lost. And by the way, the Bible has a word for sex before marriage or outside of marriage. The word is fornication. fornicators. Kind of a strong and terrible word. And yeah, I don't think we want to be fornicators. We want to be people who guard that, really closely. And it can be hard, especially in a culture that puts so much pressure, and our own bodies and desires put so much pressure. But I think with counsel, advice, self-control, accountability, and so on, we can keep ourselves pure. And that is the best thing, just again, that long-term perspective, keeping yourself for marriage, as hard as that might be in this culture, it just makes for such a wonderful marriage. And yeah, let me just say that I love marriage. Uh, you said the earlier question you asked was, is dating allowed? And like I said, dating is allowed. There's freedom in that. But I look back at my dating years and I just think of those years as terrible years. And I'm so glad that they're over, honestly, and that I'm married. And like I said, 15 years now, it's just gotten better and better and better. And yeah, I think that's what, I'm glad that I can have that testimony by God's grace, and I hope that everybody can also.
Yeah, and it's helpful क्योंकि actually if you think about it, हमारे culture में where do we learn a lot about sex from? It's basically movies, and obviously bad movies are pornography, and but the Bible actually sex is a gift from God to be celebrated in marriage, right? But हम hush बात नहीं करते, and we think about it in secret. Like hunger, we do have sexual desires, but God has given us एक platform दिया हुआ है marriage में ये celebrate करने के लिए, right? And it's more like, I think in marriage it's more like you have a letterhead, or you do house registry. All this you put the content, ये किसका घर है, or what you want recommendation on the letterhead and everything. But ultimately it's the signature and the seal that makes that letterhead or that registry pakka, right? बिना उस seal और बिना उस signature के चाहे कुछ भी लिखा हो, जितने भी clauses हो, it's of no point, right? But that seal, it's like seals the deal. Right? I think sex in that is the sealing the deal in marriage. And so अगर वो पहले ही आपने seal deal किसी और के साथ कर दिया, then the essence, the beauty of that gift is also lost. And maybe just to add, and I think you will also agree, ki, means again, we have learned this from the Bible. Godly counsel has been shared with us, and some of us maybe you haven't had that experience, but we also want to share that there is grace.
Yes.
If you have made that mistake, and Jesus still loves you, still forgives you, and can still help you. But we won't share this now. But there is definitely God's grace for those situations.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. And yeah, I think just on this point also, sex is not a dirty thing. God created this whole thing, but it's beautiful, it's pure, it's wonderful when it's done in God's way, and in the context, the kind of environment that He's created, which is a lifelong commitment of marriage. And probably I would suppose most people have messed up in some way in this area. And like you said, and I'm glad you shared that there's so much grace and there's so much forgiveness that's available. But then yeah, that also means that we move forward and not go back into those same kinds of things that are not helpful for us, and they're not what God's plan is also.
And I think I always use this example, नदी जब तक बाउंड्री में है, सुंदर है, आप बैठ सकते हो, आनंद उठा सकते हो, but बाउंड्री पार हो जाए तो उसे कहते हैं बाढ़ या flood, right? So dating, as long as it is within the right boundaries, biblical wisdom, as Pastor Arvind also said, like there is एक proverb है, there's safety in the counsel of many, and that counsel of many is important around you. So these are some questions about dating we thought about. You might have more questions. You can use this time to write your questions, or you can boldly ask us. If we have answers, we will share. But now we'll shift our gear to this thing called relationship. And relationship is basically it could be friendship, it could be family, it could be work relationship, it could be neighborhood. Everywhere we are surrounded by alag-alag rishte, alag-alag sambandh. And it's interesting, हम church में अभी topic कर रहे हैं, church membership, community and all that. and a book I was reading. See, our God is Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So God is in relationship from the beginning, and He enjoys this small community, intimate community of Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit relationship. And basically, in creation, I feel, again, I don't have a verse for this, He's extending that amazing relationship, the community. And like we all want this safe community, safe relationship. So, just one question, ki what is, because Pastor Arvind ne recently relationship ek pura series kara hai, so he's the ultimate guru on that.
Yeah.
One key mantra है ना, to maintain good relationship, एक रिश्ता निभाने का मंत्र क्या है?
Yeah, I don't have any month or anything like that, but it's a tough question. One thing, a relationship is such a big thing. We have, like you said, all kinds of relationships, friendships, and even now as a parent and marriage and my parents and brothers and sisters, all those kinds of things. But yeah, trying to boil it down to one thing, is it communication, or what could be that one thing? And the word that I'm more and more convinced about, that came to my mind again and again, is the word humility. Humility. And in fact, I have a passage here, Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 to 5. We're in fact just memorizing this passage with my kids in these days. It says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus." And that passage goes on to talk about Christ Jesus and the humility that he showed. And yeah, I think relationships are complicated. They bring so much joy, and at the same time, as we've all experienced, they bring so much heartache, disappointment. The closer you are with the person, the more heartache and the more sadness we experience from some of those breakup kind of things, or just disappointments, so on. Humility. What is humility? Like somebody said, it's not thinking more of yourself or less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. Thinking of yourself less. And I really feel now, 15 years of marriage, it's just been like a lesson in humility for 15 years. Still learning that lesson. Maybe even more so is being a parent, learning the lesson of humility. It's not about me. It's not about me. And I think when we begin to grow in humility, thinking of myself less, thinking of the other person more, giving myself like Jesus gave himself for me, valuing their interest, thinking about them, not so much about what I can get from them, but what I can give to them. That's where joy comes from. And I think that also encompasses so many of the various aspects, like empathy, for example, putting myself in their shoes, trying to see things from their perspective, or forgiveness, asking for forgiveness, saying sorry. That's like the hardest thing to do in any relationship, but it's so important in any relationship. But that takes humility, or even extending forgiveness to the other person when they've hurt you, or just basic grace, mercy, kindness, compassion, patience. All these things are just the basics of any kind of relationship, and every single one of them, I would say the common theme is humility. In fact, let me just say this also. My wife and I have a favorite book on marriage that we read before we were married, and we recommend to other people when they get married. It's called "When Sinners Say I Do." When sinners say I do, and the title says it all. We're sinners, and when we're getting married, we're it's me, sinner, getting married to you, sinner. These are not like perfect young people or whatever, boy or girl. We're sinners, and when you put two sinners together, it's just a miracle that any marriage actually works. But if you actually read that book, and I encourage you to do that, especially if you're kind of thinking about marriage or getting close to marriage, every single the chapters are basically like grace, forgiveness, kindness, patience. That's the whole book, and that's what marriage is, and that's what every relationship is. It's all these basic things, and ultimately, I would say again, they all come back to humility in some way or another. So, one key, I would say, it's humility.
No, that's helpful. I think like as I was hearing, समझ आ रहा कि humility would uh, ask me or demand in this relationship that I would value the other person. So my posture would be, I value you, and so speak. I listen and empathy and all that. I think, we would love that relationship, right? If someone wants to talk to us, spend time with us, but they really value us, right? And I think if we can practice that, and it will require humility, क्योंकि ज़्यादातर हम चाहते हैं अपने बारे में मत बात करो, मेरे बारे में सुनो, right? Let me tell you about me, myself, and I, my problems, my world. But humility will put us in a posture where we value the other person, and obviously वो भी शायद imitate करेंगे, same thing.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. The key mantra is humility, namrata. Practice it and then give us feedback. Um, okay, now we'll come to the last topic, marriage. So, uh, so the Bible, in the sense, like I was thinking, like, doesn't favor love marriage versus arranged marriage. Although there are some examples of arranged marriage, and in our culture, पहले तो arrange ही marriages था, and like I remember मेरे nani, my nani, she met her husband the day of the wedding day, when she was sitting beside the person, and that's how hardcore arranged marriage was. Obviously, abhi to matrimonial.com hai and all that stuff. But yeah, so the Bible, does it favor love versus arrange? Any thoughts?
Yeah. Love versus arranged. So again, I think the Bible doesn't really talk. I mean, it talks a lot about marriage, but it doesn't really talk much about how to find that person or to get into that kind of relationship. So I think there's quite a bit of flexibility on this culturally and so on. I would say that there's dangers in both of these. The dangers in the quote unquote love marriage, which is dating and all those kinds of things, is what we've talked about already. Getting really emotionally kind of entangled, and you just can't think straight, and you just want to get married to this person because you're so madly in love, and that's the Hollywood, Bollywood kind of story, and you're not listening to anybody, and you're just, focused on that. So that's the danger on that side. I think also, by the way, the danger in that is also to overvalue the physical appearance. I should have said that earlier. Overvalue. Don't, in the don'ts and do's and don'ts of marriage, don't overvalue the physical, because I think anybody who's married here would say, within just literally days, the physical doesn't matter. What mattered so much when you're not married, the physical, how she looks, for a guy like me and probably like most of the guys here, how she looks is everything. And then suddenly you're married, and it hardly matters because everything else is so important when you're actually living with someone. So all those things are the dangers of, especially I guess I was maybe just a little bit before the whole dating app kind of thing, and you just like swipe, I guess. I don't know, I've never done this before, but swiping, you just look at the picture basically and you swipe, I guess. It doesn't sound like a good way to try to choose who you want to date. Yeah, so all those things are the dangers of love marriage. But then a danger of arranged marriage, I've seen this also, which is that you kind of abdicate responsibility. Like, in other words, you just kind of put it on your parents or your pastor or whoever else. Yeah, you just do it, and it's fine, And yeah, I would say that's also unwise. So I think that this is your life at the end of the day. Doesn't matter how traditional your culture or your family is. You're the one who's going to be living with this person, and especially as we talked about, you want to marry someone who has the same faith, the same values, most importantly. And again, other things can probably be, we can figure that out later even. But at least that, please, even if it's like hardcore arranged marriage that you're planning, and that might be a good thing. But yeah, at least make sure that the person shares the same faith, the same values, and so on. So that's also potentially a danger on that side. It's not like perfect on that side also. There's dangers everywhere.
Yeah, so Bible is for marriage. Doesn't matter if it's love or arranged. And And even Bible is for singleness, like in the sense Bible is not anti singleness. And it's interesting, New Testament में जो सबसे ज़्यादा marriage के बारे में लिखा है, it's Jesus and Paul, and both were single men. But they have written most exhaustively about marriage. Um, yeah, and I think, I think the key is in this whole idea is understanding marriage. क्योंकि I think in again our culture, a lot of investment जाता है, कि शादी के दिन के लिए, right? The wedding day, the wedding is a festival in India. शादी के कपड़े, रिश्तेदार, कौन कौन सा salad choose करना है. No one eats the salad also. I don't know why we waste money in that reception में salad order करके. But I think we don't invest understanding marriage. है ना, शादी कैसे निभाते हैं. No one asks the question कि कैसे निभाएं. And I always say this, preparation is key. And key, if you go on a long journey with someone, there are two things necessary generally. One is you can have this great car and petrol hai, snacks hai, maps hai, acha music hai Spotify mein and all that things. But the person you're doing this long journey with is horrible. Right? You're prepared so well and the person is horrible. So the journey won't be fun, right? But the person is amazing, must अच्छे हैं. But then petrol नहीं है, गाने नहीं है, खाना नहीं है, ढाबा नहीं है. So again, the journey won't be fun. So preparation and the person. And so just one of the things, a lot of couples sometimes, especially coming from a love marriage ke background, say, and sometimes even my wife complains, we don't go anymore for dating. So romance dies after marriage. So what are your thoughts on that? And if it's true, how do you make it alive again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Romance dies after marriage. My first reaction would be, who says? That has not been my experience. Like I said, from the first week of our marriage, which was the honeymoon, basically, till today, our marriage has gotten much better. 15 years, it's consistently just only gotten better and better and better. So I know that that's maybe what the common thing is in the culture or whatever, maybe a joke or whatever. But yeah, that's not been my experience. I think maybe what happens is that, yes, that kind of excitement of knowing a new person and maybe, I don't know, holding hands for the first time or something like that, and exploring somebody's personality, getting to know them, and you feel those nice feelings, and all that kind of goes down. But marriage is more like real life. You actually see this person first thing in the morning before any makeup, dressing up, this and that, and yeah. But I think this is where real life happens in marriage, in terms of relationship with somebody, and real love happens. And I think that if you need to keep working at it, just like anything in life, you have to keep working at it. Even a friendship, even anything, even your job, your career, or your skills, or your relationship with God, you have to keep moving forward. And I think the same thing is with marriage. You can't, it's not like you just get married and it's happily ever after and that's it. You have to keep working on it and not get complacent. I think the other thing is that oftentimes after you get married, you kind of like, maybe career, kids, other things start taking priority. You kind of take your husband, wife for granted, and you kind of are into other stuff, and marriage takes a backseat. I think the Bible is very clear. After our relationship with God, our spouse is to be the second priority in our lives, and then kids, and then work, and then everything else. So I think if you keep that priority and that perspective and keep working at it, marriage actually grows and grows and grows and becomes sweeter, more beautiful, and yeah, it's just an amazing gift of God. But don't take it for granted.
Yeah, no, I think before marriage you're pursuing the person, but after marriage, in one sense, that pursuit we've reached the destination, and so you lose the charm. And I would admit, I think men, especially, maybe not you, but most men by default, we have won the trophy. अब हम क्यों भागें अब क्यों मेहनत करें right sometimes that kind of laziness comes
Yeah,
in
that's true.
so what would be your thoughts first 5 years of marriage for any couple where should they focus because there's a lot to do you know like they've moved into a new house maybe a new city नए शहर आए हैं, trying to juggle jobs एक दूसरे के साथ रिश्ता भी निभा रहे हैं but and maybe very soon they'll have kids also but first 5 years because your foundational years where should they mainly focus on
Yeah. Yeah, and I think before I answer that question, I would just go back to what you said earlier. You know, there's often so much focus on the marriage date, on the wedding day, and all, you know, spend months and months preparing, booking guests and clothes and food and venue and all those kinds of things. And then, you know, by the time the marriage is over, you're exhausted and you're kind of like, I guess now the marriage begins and, you know, we don't even have any energy and all that kind of things. I would say, you know, of course the wedding date is important for the family and guests. It's a happy day and everything else. Put the time in that's required. But even more important, that is, you have to prepare for marriage, like you said. And so premarital counseling, I think, is really, really helpful. Kind of, yeah, just having some sessions with somebody, maybe a pastor or whoever else, that can kind of ask some questions that gets you thinking, gets you talking about certain important topics, give some perspective on what is marriage actually. Because a lot of people don't actually know what does the Bible really say. I certainly did. I just assumed, you know, we all know what marriage is. You marry the person and you have kids and you do your job and you live happily ever after in some house and that's it, right? But there's actually so much more to learn. So first 5 years of marriage, coming back to your question, I think, yeah, one point that comes to my mind would be communication. Again, hopefully you've already kind of established some of that before marriage and talked about a lot of things, but you don't want to stop talking. You don't want to. I think we tend to make a lot of assumptions especially when we first get married. You know, my family did it this way, and everybody's family does it this way. But because you've only seen one family, the family that you're from, but not everybody's like that. So even just asking, you know, what did you mean by that? Not assuming the worst, but giving the benefit of the doubt. You know, talking a lot, asking questions. That was some of the things that made our first years of marriage difficult. You know, just making a lot of assumptions that just weren't true. If we had just talked and asked for more clarification, tried to get more understanding, I think a lot of those things would have been smoother. Yeah, other things would be like trying to figure out in-laws. In-laws is a complicated thing, especially in India. Trying to establish clear boundaries. You know, what is our relationship going to be with your parents, my parents, and there's so many expectations and all those kinds of things. Let's talk about it. Let's decide this together, how we want to handle this. You know, it's not about my parents or about your parents. We love both parents, but you know, we are also newly married, and you know, we have to just kind of figure this out. So how are we going to do that? I think that would be a good thing. Again, that was complicated in my case, and yeah, a lot more discussion, less assumptions would have been helpful, I think, in some of those areas. I think another thing would be like spiritual rhythms, and maybe especially just getting involved in church, going to church, deciding on a church together and attending faithfully, getting to know other people in a church, and even other things, praying together, maybe reading the Bible together, just establishing some of those rhythms early on in your marriage, I think will be very helpful, especially before kids come and those kinds of things. And one other thing I would say is conflict. Conflict is part of marriage. Even the best marriages have conflict, of course, and conflict is even a good thing in many respects. You learn a lot through conflict, but trying to, you know, one of the things we talk a lot about when we do premarital counseling, my wife and I, with people who are about to get married, is about conflict style, conflict, you know, fighting fair, we call it, and certain things, even in conflict, in the heat of conflict, when you're angry and upset and all those things, there's certain things that you don't say, that you don't do. So just being aware of those things and learning those things maybe, and kind of establishing a little, like, even in conflict, some healthy kind of conflict resolution patterns, I think is going to be helpful.
No, that's good. Communication. I think yeah, हर चीज के बारे में बात करो. I think बात करो. Spiritual rhythms, that's helpful. Conflict, लड़ाई कैसे करें? चूल्हे और बर्तन से नहीं. And I mean, just I would add, I would like this is the after marriage, have a lot of physical intimacy, right? And talk about it. That also builds, makes it very strong. You did touch on in-laws and boundaries. We'll maybe discuss that in a minute. Money. A lot of times, again, कहते हैं कि हर marriage universal, west, east, wherever you are, there are some things that create conflict in all marriages. And money is one, and especially अगर आप urban city में हो, everyone is earning, ये तेरा पैसा, ये मेरा पैसा, so like how should couples think about money?
Yeah, I think probably I think the big conflict areas of marriage are money, kids, and in-laws. In my experience, yeah, with people that we talk to, and I think those are kind of what the surveys say also. Money, yeah, it's a big area. It's a very personal topic. It's a very difficult topic. I was surprised how difficult it is actually to talk about money, because it is, like Jesus said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. You're actually talking about our hearts when you're talking about money, and everybody's got a different approach to money. And yeah, I think one of the sad things, like you mentioned, nowadays is husband and wife keep separate bank accounts. My money and your money, especially when husband and wife are both working, you're earning, and it goes in your bank account, I'm earning, and it goes in my bank account, and I'll do this with my, I mean, you might not like how I'm going to spend my money, but it's my money, so I can do whatever I want with it. It was so common nowadays, and I think that is unwise, really, really unwise. Like I said earlier, marriage is oneness. You two become one. And that is real marriage, the way that God intends it to be, and that's where the beauty comes. We're just gelling into one. In every aspect, we want to become one. So we have the same families, you could say, the same goals. We have the same ministry. We have the same work, and as much as we can, we're trying to become one. And a huge part of that is also financially, we become one. And so, accounts and all that is less important. But, I think we make decisions financially together. So it's not my money and your money. I know I'm talking like we're married. But, yeah, we want to make our decisions together, whatever it is, right? And that goes for everything, but especially money. It's our money, just like it's our house and our everything else. So, yeah, I think I won't say more. There's a lot more we can say about money and budgets and this and that, but yeah, I can stop there.
See, so the key idea, essence is oneness, ekta, and different accounts, but one budget, one heart, one view of how you want to save, how you want to spend. In-laws, I think you did mention in-laws, and I think saas sasur se is a big issue. Obviously, now Indian culture has moved towards a lot of nuclear family, and it is a big tension. And yeah, so what are some yeah, I mean, healthy boundaries where we want to love and honor parents and in-laws, but also we want to keep that oneness. And a lot of times ऐसा होता है कि sometimes a husband favors his mother. If only my wife would be like my ma, and the daughter might feel like मेरे पापा जैसे क्यों नहीं है, and that just comparison and creates a lot of tension. But also the responsibility, you have to look after your parents or in-laws, and creates a lot of tension between husband and wife. So what is biblically and culturally possible here?
Yeah, that's a massive question, and one that causes so much conflict in people that we've counseled and worked with. So, I think the first part of this is to be very clear about what does the Bible say. And thankfully, the Bible gives very clear directions on this. And again, I've already read it or said it. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, the man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife. They'll become one, right? Leave his father and mother. the man will leave his father and mother. And this is talking, thousands of years ago in the culture where there was joint families. So that leaving is not a physical leaving. I would say, the way I say it is, it's a priority change. Up till now, your father and mother have been the priority in your life, but now God is very clear in His Word. Your priority has shifted because you're married. Now, one way that I say it is that, people say this is my blood relation. My blood flows through my son, my daughter's veins. We're blood relations, but the Bible says there's a closer relationship than a blood relationship, and that is a one flesh relationship. And that is the relationship in marriage. So that has to take priority. Like I said earlier, first your relationship with God, then your relationship with your spouse, then your kids, and then extended family and everything else. So just being very clear on that is very helpful, especially in our context for the guy who's, that classic sort of dilemma. My mom is saying one thing, my wife is saying another thing, and I'm torn. And, it's all that kind of mess. And I think the Bible says, you have a very clear priority. That's your wife. And now together, as a husband and wife, we're going to serve our parents. So we always want to honor our parents. We want to love our parents. That is another thing that we have seen is that we say, we're one flesh, and forget about the parents and just like leave them and all that. And the Bible doesn't talk about that also. It talks about honoring your parents till they die. And however good or bad or everything they are, we have to honor our parents. We have to love them. We have to serve them. We have to continue to involve them and take their counsel. And that's a good thing. That just makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, we're doing it together. So we're talking about it. We are, and also, we're creating a new family. So we have to not just do things or assume that we're going to do things the way that your parents did it or my parents did it. We're a new family. And, leaving them and becoming together means that we have to decide now together how we're going to do it, and taking the wisdom of what we've experienced and our parents and all those kinds of things. But we have to decide together how we're going to do this and how we're going to love our parents together. So I think that really, at least in theory, solves a lot of problems. And it really actually solves a lot of problems. But I think that willingness to really put it into practice, have some tough conversations. I think probably every new couple will have to have some tough conversations at some point with with both parents, both sets of parents, and establish some kind of boundaries, whatever those are. But husband and wife have to talk about it and decide those things together.
Yeah. No, I think, Kiki, I think sometimes we don't understand that between husband and wife, एक पवित्र बंधन है, the priority बंधन, and that sacred बंधन के बीच में actually kids and parents are not supposed to come. Anyone is not supposed to come, so that they can devote themselves to each other. Thank you, Pastor Arvind. These were our made-up questions that, from our own experience, we think they were important to address. And we haven't touched everything. There's a lot to cover. Maybe we'll have another session sometime later on this topic.